She reads the message, but doesn't reply. You refresh the screen for the third time. It feels like a weight pressing down on your chest, but your mind lies to itself. She's probably just busy. The truth is, you already know something's wrong. You just haven't had the strength to face it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not deceive yourself with hope. See things as they truly are." And the truth is this: when a woman doesn't care, you'll always feel like you're doing too much. You give more than what's needed. You try to balance her coldness with your warmth. You tell yourself that if you stay honest, she'll eventually understand. But real connection doesn't require effort. No guessing, no forcing, no strategy. When she doesn't choose you, she won't say it outright. She lets her actions speak, quietly, but ruthlessly. And if you're clear-headed, you'll see the signs. 7 of them, unmistakable. They won't say, "I hate you." They say, "I never made space for you in my heart." Epictetus once reminded us, it's not the absence of love that hurts you, it's your own refusal to let go of what's already gone. So this video isn't here to help you win her back. It's here to help you see clearly that the one most worth holding on to is you. Most men miss these signs, but you won't, because right now, you're about to learn the 7 truths no one ever taught you about women. She always replies late. She sees the message, but doesn't respond. You stare at the word "seen" as if staring long enough might somehow change it. 10 minutes, 30, an hour. You start making excuses for her. Maybe she's busy, probably in a meeting. Maybe she's sleeping. But you know, you've always known. If you mattered, she would have replied. She's not busy. She just doesn't want to spend her free time on you. In a world where everyone's eyes are locked on their phones, silence is never an accident. It's a choice, a conscious one, and you weren't part of it. Marcus Aurelius said, "Stop complaining about what you can't control and start mastering your response." That's what a Stoic remembers, and what modern men often forget. You feel anxious. You feel small. You rewrite your message. You check for typos. You reread the chat 3 times before pressing send. All of it just to avoid bothering her again. Sound familiar? This isn't love. It's a hunger for validation. You're not talking to her. You're battling your own fear of being abandoned. And you call it persistence. Let's be honest. A woman who truly cares won't leave you drowning in silence. She may be busy, but you won't be left in limbo. You'll know where you stand, even if it's just a line. "Hey, I'm in a meeting. I'll text you later." If that line never comes, then you're just the space between her better options. Silence is the most honest language there is. It doesn't explain. It doesn't comfort. It just leaves you there, waiting until you no longer have the strength to wait. And the real danger? The more you wait, the more attached you become. The more she withholds, the more you cling, and you mistake distance for mystery. You're not being tested, you're being ignored. You think you need more time to understand her. You don't. You need more courage to admit the truth. She's not late because she's busy. She's late because you're not a priority. And while you wait, she's smiling at someone else's message, replying in 4 seconds. While you've been waiting 4 hours, now you understand. It's not the silence that hurts. It's the false hope you've been feeding. And this is only the first cut. Because when she starts flirting, you won't be the one she chooses. 2, she flirts with everyone but you. She laughs brightly when talking to others. Her eyes light up. Her gestures soften. A tilt of the head, a touch to her hair, a quick joke that crackles in the air. You see it all, not because you're insecure, but because you once hoped the gaze would be yours. But when it's your turn, she's just polite, not cold, not stiff, but there's no fire, and you begin to reassure yourself. Maybe she's just not that close yet. She has high standards. Maybe she needs more time to open up. She's not cold. She just doesn't offer warmth. To you, you're not rejected in words. You're dismissed through quiet, deliberate absence, and you call it she's being reserved. Seneca once said, "They don't ignore you because you're weak. They just don't care Because you lack gravity. Women feel gravity. They're drawn to those who pull them out of balance, even for a single heartbeat. The more you try to be kind, patient, giving, the more she sees you as a good friend, or worse, a mirror she glances into just to feel wanted. Here's the truth few admit. Some women keep you close enough to avoid guilt, but far enough to never let you matter. You become the emotional spare, the one she texts to fill the silence, but never the one she'd reach for in public. And no, you shouldn't be surprised. Flirting isn't logic, it's instinct. It happens when she feels, not when you qualify. And the cruelest part? She might feel something for someone no better than you. But because he doesn't try to please, he creates space where attraction can breathe. You. The more you try to prove your worth, the more you disappear. You don't need her to like you. You need to see clearly. She never saw you emotionally. And if you're still holding on, still trying to decode a glance meant for someone else, ask yourself, why can she flirt with everyone, except the one who's always there? The answer isn't in her. It's in what you're willing to accept and what you're giving up just to stay. But she won't need to push you away. She knows you won't leave. So the next move is soft, like wind, but sharp enough to show you were never essential. She'll cancel, gently, again and again. Not because she's busy, but because she knows you'll still be there. 3, she cancels, gently, but repeatedly. The first time she cancels, and you nod with understanding. The second time, you still act compassionate. By the third, something feels off, but you let it slide. By the fourth, you don't even react. You've simply grown used to being postponed. No drama, no harsh words, just delayed, again and again. She always has a reason. Sometimes it's work, sometimes it's a headache, sometimes it's something came up with family. No one says she's lying. Maybe it's even true. But the real question isn't, are her reasons valid? The question is, why does this always happen with you? Because she doesn't want to see you. She just doesn't want to say it. You're not rejected with words. You're pushed aside with ambiguity, until you're too afraid to even ask for clarity. And do you know what's truly happening? She knows you'll wait. The more she cancels, the more certain she becomes, you'll still be there. Not because you matter, but because you're afraid to be left behind. And that fear, that's what she controls without even trying. Epictetus once said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them." You're not suffering because a date was canceled. You're suffering because you call it temporary, while she's treating it as quiet withdrawal. And every time you tell yourself it's just a one-off, you miss the truth. You're working hard to hold on to something that's already slipping away. What you call hope is really a delay before your self-respect collapses. She doesn't slam the door. She just steps back, one step, then another, until you can no longer walk in. Even though the door looks slightly open, you think you're being patient, but you're just scared to lose the shadow of a possibility that never truly existed. She doesn't need to push you away because you're already staying, without asking for anything more. And the brutal truth is, the more willing a man is to wait, the less he's seen as worth showing up for. You think persistence is strength, but in her eyes, it's a sign you have nowhere else to be, no one else to meet, no value beyond her. And when she comes back, it won't be to make things right, not to apologize, but to tell you about another man, the man she never cancels on, the man she never makes wait, the man she chose from the very beginning. 4, she talks about other men, and you're sitting right in front of her. She laughs, she talks a lot. It seems like things are moving forward, until another man's name enters the room, not in passing, not hidden inside a casual story, but clearly, repeatedly, deliberately. He makes her happy. He gets her. He's different. She's not bragging. She's not comparing. But you know, you've just vanished from center stage. She tells stories. You nod. You listen. You smile. And silently tell yourself, it's fine. I get it. I'm different. Number, you're not. You've been placed in the emotional safety zone, Not the man she chose, but the one she believes won't leave, even when she talks about someone else. This isn't a test. It's not a mind game. It's not about making you jealous. It's her way of saying, you were never in the part of her that feels. No woman talks freely about the man who makes her heart race while sitting in front of someone who makes her feel the same. No one does that. You think you're special, but you're just the audience in someone else's story. She talks about the one who stirs her heart, and you're stirred just by being allowed to listen. You think, at least she trusts me? She's just venting, because she knows you won't ask for more than a place to stay. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Stop hoping others will treat you fairly, and start treating yourself with fairness." You weren't born to be someone's launch pad, so they can fly towards someone else. You don't need to hear more about him. You're not her therapist. You're not a side character. You're not her personal emotional outlet. A man with inner strength doesn't sit there, listening as he's silently compared to someone else. He doesn't get jealous. He doesn't get angry. He simply stands up. Because self-respect doesn't let him stay seated. You don't need to ask who she likes. Just watch how she speaks. And the light in her eyes when she says his name. If that spark is brighter than anything she's shown you, then you already have your answer. But the deepest pain, it's not that she talks about him, it's that you're still sitting there, nodding, smiling, pretending to be strong, while something inside you quietly fades. You think you're being kind, but really, you're handing emotional power to someone who won't hold it with care. You believe you're building connection, but all you're really doing is proving, I'm safe enough for her to talk about someone else, without hesitation. And while you're still there, she's thinking about someone who doesn't ask, doesn't wait, doesn't bend, and still draws her in, not with words, but with a glance. What comes next? She stops asking questions, because indifference doesn't start with silence. It starts the moment she no longer cares who you are. 5. She doesn't ask questions. You speak. She nods. You share. She smiles faintly. You open up more. She changes the subject. You begin to feel it. Not rejection, not confrontation, just the absence of curiosity. You talk about your work. No one asks why. You bring up the past. No one asks what happened. You open your heart. She listens, but she doesn't follow, doesn't probe, doesn't want to know more. This is the sign most men miss. When a woman is interested, she asks questions, not out of politeness, but from a deep instinct to connect. Curiosity is the first sign of emotion. Where there are no questions, there's no desire to explore. And here's the paradox. The more you speak, the quieter she becomes. The quieter she becomes, the more you speak, trying to spark some kind of interest. You think you're building a bridge, but in truth, you're having a one-sided conversation wrapped in the illusion of a dialogue. A woman who doesn't ask questions isn't being reserved. She simply sees nothing worth uncovering. You tell yourself, maybe she's just the quiet listening type. But no, she talks plenty, just not with you. Because if you mattered, she'd want to know. She'd want to understand. She'd want to step into your inner world. No questions means no desire. No desire means no emotional pull. Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen more than we speak." But you've spoken too much. Not because you're overbearing, but because no one bothered to ask you anything. And you know what's truly unsettling? You're not being ignored. You're being treated as someone not worth discovering. You think, if I share enough, she'll get curious. But the truth is, people aren't drawn to what's fully exposed. They're drawn to what invites the chase. You've laid it all out. No mystery, no edge, and hope that honesty would build connection. But without mystery, there's no gravity. And without gravity, there's no emotion. She doesn't ask questions, not because she's busy, but because you haven't made her want to know more. And while you're still trying to pull her into your world with words, she's already stepping back because she doesn't feel the need to enter. She avoids depth, even unintentionally, because the body always speaks truth, even when the smile stays on the lips. 6, she avoids contact, even unconsciously. You sit next to her, close enough for a casual touch. If either of you wanted it, but nothing happens, you lean slightly toward her. She shifts away. Not obviously, not rudely, just enough to let you know you shouldn't come any closer. You reach out. She doesn't pull away, but she doesn't respond either. Not everyone says, "Don't touch me." Some people just make you never want to try again. You think she's sensitive. You assume she's reserved. You remind yourself, be patient, be gentle. But you don't see what's happening. The more careful you become, the more invisible you feel. People can fake interest. They can pretend to listen, but they can't fake chemistry. And the body reveals the truth first. Even when the mouth smiles, even when the words stay soft. She doesn't reach for you. She doesn't lean in when speaking. She doesn't hold your gaze when you linger too long. A woman doesn't need to push you away. If she never let you close in the first place, you begin to adjust. You sit farther. You stop reaching. You don't sit close in photos. You avoid leaning in. Even when you share the same narrow space, you call it respect. But deep down, you know what it really is. You're shrinking yourself, just to avoid making her uncomfortable. Society praises men who are considerate, polite, thoughtful, but no one talks about how it suffocates a man when he's afraid to sit close to the woman he cares about. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone requires you to shrink to be accepted, leave." You're not rejected in words. You're rejected in the silent pullbacks, in the empty space between two bodies that never touch. She doesn't have to be cold. She just has to not respond. And you sit there, quietly lowering your presence until you become emotionally invisible. You think the more careful you are, the more comfortable she'll be. But the more careful you are, the less real you feel. If she once leaned into someone else's shoulder, but keeps her back straight next to you. You don't need to ask any further questions. You don't need someone bold. You just need someone who doesn't flinch when you come near. Because if every time you lean in, you feel like you're in the wrong place, then you're not searching for closeness. You're just trying to avoid silent rejection. She makes you feel small, not with words, but by making you shrink just to fit inside the empty space she's willing to offer you. 7. She makes you feel small. You don't remember exactly when it started. All you know is, each time you're around her, you shrink a little. Not because she tries to belittle you, not because she says anything cruel. There's just something in the air that makes you feel less. Less asked, less seen, less mentioned, less included. You're present, but you carry no weight. You listen, but you're not remembered. You give, but you're not held on to. This isn't rejection. It's more subtle than that. It's the quiet feeling that you're folding yourself to fit into the space she's giving you, and that space keeps shrinking. So you choose your words more carefully. You laugh a little less. You time your silence more precisely because you're afraid of doing too much, afraid of being too much, afraid that you'll step outside her invisible line of tolerance. You used to be confident, firm in who you were, grounded, but around her, you feel like a muted version of yourself, more agreeable, but emptier. A woman doesn't need to cut you down with words if every time she shows up, you find yourself shrinking. She didn't teach you how to feel small. You taught yourself. When affection flowed only one way, and every attempt to connect was met with a calm that felt like absence. Seneca once wrote, "The wise man does not measure himself by how others treat him, but by how consistently he remains himself, even when ignored." But the truth is, you can't ignore that feeling, that aching silence, the one that says, you're not even enough to provoke a reaction. You might be funny to others, sharp in a crowd, attractive to different women, but next to her, you feel ordinary, like your worth dissolves the moment her eyes stop resting on you. You haven't become less. You're just standing next to someone who makes you forget how strong you used to feel. She's not the one making you smaller. You're the one compressing yourself to fit into the space she leaves behind. And that is the most dangerous kind of erosion. When you're not rejected, not accepted, just adjusted bit by bit until no one notices, not even you. You are not a weak man, but if you stay too long in a role where you're unseen, you'll start to live as if you're not meant to be seen. And that's when you have to ask, are you still in love with her, or just trying to hold on to the last place you felt like you mattered? The ending doesn't begin when she walks away. It begins the moment. You no longer recognize who you are when you're with her. No one ever leaves you with a single, blunt goodbye. They step back, pull their care away, bit by bit. They show up less. And at some point, you realize you're the only one still standing there. No farewell, no anger, no conclusion. Just this. You're no longer written into their story. You see every signal, the growing gaps, the quiet pauses, but you stay because you think, maybe I haven't tried hard enough. Or worse, maybe I don't deserve more than this. That is the most dangerous place to be. When you start adjusting your worth based on someone who no longer sees you the way they once did. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't concern yourself with whether others recognize your worth. Be concerned when you forget it yourself." You don't need to be validated to have value. You just need to stop placing your heart in hands that don't know how to hold it. She didn't hurt you. She didn't have to. Because you've been cutting yourself a little more each day just to fit into the space she's left behind. You don't need to be angry. You don't need to hate. You just need to pause and ask yourself, am I building a relationship, or am I battling my own intuition every single day? Indifference isn't as cruel as controlled hope, and you've lived long enough in that cage. Not everyone who doesn't choose you is a villain, but you shouldn't keep choosing them at the cost of losing yourself. She might be wonderful, but if her presence makes you feel small, weak, or never enough, that's not love. That's erosion. Walking away isn't defeat. Walking away is the first act of a man reclaiming himself. Turn off the notifications. Go quiet. Not to punish her, but to finally hear your own voice again. You have nothing left to prove. Just one thing to remember: who you were before you tried to become what she never asked for. If this video struck something in you, don't let it fade like a sad minute you'll forget tomorrow. Save it. Share it with another man still lost in the gray zone. And if you'd rather be reminded by truth than illusion, follow this channel. We don't need more advice. We just need to be awakened at the right moment. Epictetus once said, "Happiness and freedom begin when you stop trying to control what's out of your hands and focus instead on controlling yourself." She didn't choose you. Good. Now, you finally have the chance to choose yourself.